Well, hello, everybody. I am so happy to be bringing Candace Nadine Breen to you today. I spoke with her a few months back and we had a great conversation, and she's an author of the book After the Darkness. It's a survivor's guide to a true story of childhood in incest and domestic violence. She has her book on Audible, and I gobbled it up within a 24-hour period because her story just moved me. I did not walk the same path as her, but I could relate in a lot of ways when it came to the damage and the dysfunction within a home and the violence and the domestic violence. I personally have not experienced domestic violence to this extreme that Candace has experienced, but I can relate in a lot of ways because I watched my mom struggle through domestic violence on some seriously severe areas of her life. And I personally have lost my mom to suicide due to all the trauma that she endured. And it breaks my heart when I hear women that have such traumatic childhoods that cannot get the help and the support that they need, or dig into the inner strength that God has given them at birth to be able to heal and walk through that journey and find the pieces of truth and strength within that trauma. I am just so moved by your story, Candace. Did you want to share a little bit about your book with the audience today? Because I think that it's a story that people really, truly need to hear. And then just how you've been able to overcome that adversity. And then I know that you're facing some new challenges today, which I want to spend the brunt of our conversation talking about, because I do believe that the world needs to hear what's going on out there outside of like the news filtration systems, because they tend to just tell us what they want us to hear, but they're not really truly sharing the truth that's going on behind the curtains. And so I'm really honored that you're here to speak with my audience today, and I'm excited to hear what's going on in your world and how we can support you.
Well, thank you for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. Um, the book After the Darkness was originally a journal. I would when I was younger and I needed and after my parents had divorced and moved their separate ways, and I was sent to live with my father because after all I was his child and my mother did not want a reminder of him. So
Mm.
I was the only child that she had with him. So I was sent to go stay with him. Um, and it was the day after Christmas that we were put out in the cold.
Mm.
And when we lived in a rat and roach infested apartment on the south side of Providence, I had no one to talk to. I was at the time when I was in school. There were it was a big time of racism. There was a lot of racism in the parochial school that I went to, and parochial because I was not Catholic or anything like that. It's just that my southern born parents, when they moved here, they were told that sending kids to parochial school was good discipline or something. And back then they did discipline, whether fairly or unfairly, they did it.
Mhm.
Um, the nuns who were there. So
Well, I even got disciplined in a public school with rulers, and just by picking up a pencil, I would get my hair pulled by teachers. Like
oh
that
yeah,
stuff is like they would be in so much trouble if they pulled that
right.
stuff off now. Right?
Right, yes, and that's what they did. I mean, the yardsticks and the slamming your head against the chalkboard and things that,
Oh,
yeah, or slamming your head on the desk. And we had a teacher who'd tip over that you in the desk while you was in the desk
oh my
if your
word.
desk was not clean.
Oh my
um
word.
it was awful. But so I had no friends, no one to talk to. So all the experiences I was going through with the abuse with my father at home, and the loneliness I felt because my mother was not around. I started writing it on sheets of loose leaf paper in a trapper keeper. I would,
Yeah.
and I would write and write, and I would be crying. I was full of so much emotion because I was right in it, that I would often scribble on the page because I couldn't take it. I had so much emotion. I remember scribbling, and then I'd ball up the pages, flush them down the toilet. And I
Mm,
did that many times. I couldn't, that's why it took over 20 years for me to put it in the form that it is, a book,
mm,
and have it done professionally and everything. It was, and then when high school, the journals started adding up. I had a lot of journals, and the more I got away from the situation, the more I was able to write about it, even though it hurt and pain and everything. And when we had our first child, a girl, my husband and I, in 2007, yes, 2008, excuse me, 2008, I held this little baby in my arms, and I wanted to give her the world. And I
mm,
didn't want her to have to go through what I went through. And I thought it was important for me to free myself of all of that
mm.
and do it for her,
Amen.
do it for her, because your life changes when you give birth and you hold that baby in your arms. You start thinking about so many things, and I just know, I just felt that, okay, it's time.
Mhm.
So I started writing it because I knew I was a little nervous about coming out to the world with my story, because it's not pretty.
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to sugarcoat it either. I wanted to say every single thing, whether with
Right.
uncensored, because I I went through it, and why should others have to tiptoe around it? It should not be sugar coated, because it was not a sugary, beautiful thing.
That's right.
And if you couldn't, and that's the problem with, and that's how it becomes taboo, is we can't deal with it. People can't deal with it. So my first step into speaking out was, somehow I fell upon RAIN, the Rape Abuse Incest National Network out of Washington, D.C. I
Okay.
don't know how I fell upon it, but I wanted to start speaking somehow, and get, before I, test the waters before my book came out, because it was going to be personal.
Mhm.
So I did that. My daughter was not even a year old yet, and I did the application, and you had to write your story, an essay. So I did, and I was accepted in, and I had an assignment right away. Um, I had to speak at the Providence State House, outside of it, in front of a huge crowd that was assembled there for the Walk a Mile in Her Shoes event.
Oh, wow.
Right. And my husband participated in that. He wore he's 6'2", and the men are supposed to wear women's shoes and walk a mile to symbolize the struggles of women in abusive situations. At high heels, they couldn't
Your
wear
hubby
flat.
did that?
Where we went to a drag queen website, because there were none that could fit him in the store. And
What an awesome hubby you have. That is
yes, and
so awesome.
he was very proud of himself with we're walking in the drag queen high heels. They were supposed to be red, but we couldn't find, there were no more red, so we got gray, silver. And he was pushing the stroller with my daughter in it, walking the mile. And there were a lot of men who were all tipping and stuff, but they were doing it. They were helping one another. It was a beautiful event.
Mhm.
And I was empowered at to when before I went up to speak. So I was so nervous when I went up to tell my story, because they had a number of people share their story, and I was one of them. And I was so afraid, because when I looked into the audience, there were some people I went to high school with, I went to school with, who did not know my story.
Mm.
And I it was freeing, sort of. It was freeing.
Mhm.
And my I received a letter from a high school person after the event, saying that she never knew, and she felt so horrible. Maybe she should have noticed more. And I said, it was no one's fault. It was not your
Mm.
fault. It was not your job to know. You were a student just like I was.
That's right.
And then another woman approached me, out of a crowd. She was sort of was hiding. She had on dark glasses and a hat, and wearing nondescript clothing. And she said she's been in the state for a number of months. She escaped her abuser in New Jersey, I believe it was New York, New Jersey. She packed everything she could into her little hatchback car and
Mhm.
drove and drove and drove until she got here, and where she went into hiding. And this was her first public appearance. And she said now that she knows that there are resources and more out there, now she will try to get some help,
Mm.
and that she was inspired by my story. And
Mhm.
that made me feel, as my first event, yeah, okay, yeah, I'm doing the right thing.
That's
There are
right.
people that are going to be helped, um, including myself. And
I'm
then
a huge believer as what the more we share our story, the more levels
mhm,
of healing that comes.
that's
And
correct.
when we hear someone else's challenges and how they've been able to achieve some form of victory from
Mhm.
being that victim, and going through the trauma, they truly are inspired by your courage and your vulnerability. And it gives them the strength to be able to go and seek the help. So that is so encouraging that that woman stepped out and shared that with you.
Yes, it was. But, with every up, there's a down. And the more I began to share my story, the more assignments I got from Rain. Like, I was in People magazine. I did tons of radio interviews sharing about the story. And because that was my assignment from Rain, that's what they connected me with those people, and that's what I was supposed to do.
Right.
And so I had a friend that I had since college. And we grew up and we were professionals, and still had talked. And she had children before I did, so she had toddlers when mine was still a baby.
Mhm.
My oldest was still a baby, and I hadn't had my next one yet. And she told me, when I just asked her, I said, hey, did you see my interview? I was interviewed on the radio, blah blah blah. And she said, I need you to stay away from me and my
Oh,
family and my children. Don't bring that stuff around my kids. Stay away from my kids.
wow.
And it hurt me. She said, it hurt me. She
And
didn't
what
want to.
was her reasoning?
Well, years later, after years later, she came to me and apologized,
Okay.
and said it was because she had dealt with that in her family.
And she didn't know how to process it for her own. So she was looking into a mirror and that guilt of just not, because we tend to take that trauma sometimes and we'll put it in a little black box and
Mhm.
we try to stuff it down and hide it and pretend that it never happened.
Right.
And then when people that like yourself that have the courage to get up there on the stage and share how your story in such a vulnerable way with all the details, and then write this book, which took immense courage. So like, good on you. It stirs stuff up in us. I know I personally, I had an abortion in my early 20s after my daughter. And I did that with that situation. I put it in a little black box and I buried it. I believed my own lies. I didn't want to deal with it. Anytime the topic came up in conversation with other women, I would like back up and I would just remove myself. I didn't want it to feel uncomfortable with the decision that I made. And then I remember being at an event and I remember like, there was a woman speaking there from the pregnancy care center, and she was talking about her journey of infertility. And another woman was talking about having an abortion and adoption and all these different variables of um, brokenness, I guess. I don't know what to call it. And it just started stirring something up in me. And I'm like, yeah, I need to share my truth. And I did. I shared my truth, and I was able to get into a support group to actually walk through the healing journey of that shame and that grief. But I didn't want to face it. I really
Right.
didn't.
Right.
Wasn't something that I'm like, yeah, look what I did. Like I wasn't proud of it, and so you tend to hide, and we do that. We push everybody out of our lives that wants to try to cause us to,
Think about
come
it.
clean.
Yeah. And it wasn't easy to try to talk to it. I mean, it was gradual steps before actually writing the book.
Mm,
Um, that told everything. So, I was the talking helped, the doing the assignments from Rain, that helped. And then I decided I would write a blog and test it, so I blogged like a little bit, about the things. It was my new journal, sort of.
right. Yeah.
And and then the great thing about blogging, you could share it to social media. So I would share it to my social media, and testing the waters again, because I was afraid. I was
Mhm.
afraid. And I did, put the content warning up there for them to know, look, this is not pretty.
Mm.
So when that happened, there was a former colleague of mine who emailed me and said, so when you write in the book? I said, I don't know. I don't know yet. And then it just happened.
Mhm.
One week, there was a week when I was strong enough, because also one thing I forgot to add, um, shortly after the assignments from Rain, I was on Cafe Mom looking at some of their support, their groups for moms, and there was a group called Survivors, a survivors group, and there were only 69 members in it, and I joined. And shortly after I joined, I mean, it was nice being able to just talk with all different survivors and share your experience and not be judged.
Mhm.
And the admin of it said, look, I have twins. I have so much going on. I can't do this group anymore. Could you do it? And I said, me? I'm like a new member. And I said, okay. And before Cafe Mom shut down, because they did shut down, sadly, there were about 400, a little
Ah,
bit over 400 members in that group. And it was, there were it was a lot of talking people off the ledge and saying you're worth it. And it was a good experience for me, I think.
mhm.
And then it made me think, I have to tell my story to
Mhm.
people, so that because someone's gonna get help. And when I was a kid going through this, I said to myself one day, I said, you know, I'm no one's helping me, but one day when I get big, I'm going to help someone like me by telling
Mm.
my story. Some little girl And now I know it's, I said little girl, but it can be back then, but it can be anyone. But I said, I'm going to help a little girl who thinks that she's alone and there's no one to help her at all.
That's right.
So,
We get, and I say saying little girl is so profound, because there's so much inner child work from that trauma that we have to do. We have to go and visit
yes,
ourselves as that
yeah,
younger version, so that we
yeah,
can truly let that younger version of ourselves know that they're safe. And so we're not locked in that space. I recently had an experience with a coach. She's phenomenal, because I was having some blockages in some areas of my life. And I've done a ton of healing work myself, but I keep always like, there's this one image that's ingrained in my memory from a childhood experience that my mom was being abused, and it terrified me. And I must have been like 4.
mm,
And it just so ingrained that the colors, the smells, the sounds, the fear, I could still smell the sweat on my skin. Like it's so real that it's like it happened yesterday, even though it was 40 years ago. And so I had this experience with this coach. She actually walked me back and asked me, like, where was I in that scenario? And I was hiding in it behind a chair. And the situation that happened, my mom was in a really bad relationship, and this guy that she was with came busting through the door. He was drunker than drunk, and he had a shotgun pointed at my mom's head and threatening to blow her head off. My brother had tried, he had an older brother, about almost 3 years older than I. He tried to protect my mom, and the guy punched him in the head, and he's out cold on the couch. And I'm hiding because I don't know what I can do. I'm 4, like,
or
and then all of a sudden the cops busted in and wrestled this guy to the ground. And then my mom packed us up, and we ended up pitching a tent on a golf course. And it was but so the night ended up being like fun and mystical for us. But it was like that whole experience of like, I could be stuck with this guy. I don't know what was going through my head at the time, but I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel that my mom was making wise choices, and she continued to not make wise choices because she had her own trauma.
yeah,
But it impacted me and locked me in that space where I just felt like I could never get past this one area of my life for some reason. So it's so good that you said inner child, because
yeah,
sometimes we try to run away from the trauma of childhood, thinking that we can outrun it, but we can't. We have
no,
we have to go and visit that space, and we have to walk through all the different levels of healing, and let that child know that they're loved and that they're safe,
right.
and that life is
You,
so much better on the other side.
that reminds me of an incident that actually happened to me recently, very recently, like 3 weeks ago recently.
Oh,
I
wow.
was taking a nap, and I don't know, for some reason I was remembering in my mind an incident that happened. I probably mentioned it in the book too. I was about 5 or 6, and I was sitting. My parents were still living in the same house together, and I was in the parlor because we lived in a Victorian house, so there was a double parlor, and I was just sitting there. I had my yellow Donald Duck plastic glasses on, and I don't know, I was playing with the doll or something. And my father stormed in, drunk, always drunk. And he had these very, very thick, heavy hands. That's a trait of all of the men on from my father's side. And I see my son is going to have those same hands, but hopefully he'll be more gentle.
That's
Um,
right.
and I think he will be. He's a
Mhm.
gentle soul.
Mhm.
But my father just reached back and said I was being fresh or something, and slapped me across the face. My glasses fell off. I had a print on my face, and I was crying. And now me remembering this, sleeping and during this sort of experience that I don't think I really was sleeping. I was experiencing it. So my adult me went to child me and hugged her.
Mm,
Okay, I actually hugged, and I could feel the hug healing a part of myself that needed healing.
amen.
And I told little me that you are beautiful, you are loved. You may not feel it with these people, but you are loved. And then I yelled at my father, said something to him that he's horrible, he's going to end up paying for it, blah 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 blah. And then somehow I got little me out of there and put her in my car and said, let me show you what the future looks like.
Oh, I love it.
And then drove her to my house. And she was like, this is our house. This is your house. I said, this is our house. You
Mhm.
still will have to, there's going to be a lot of bumps and pains and along the way, but there is light at the end of that tunnel. And
Amen.
this is it. And it's not done yet, but this is what you have to look forward to.
Amen.
And um, I really, and I just hugged her again and told her she was beautiful, because no one told me it like that as a child.
Right.
No one told me that I was special,
Mhm.
or that they loved me. And I told her I loved her very much.
Yeah.
And I could feel a part of me healing. I needed to do that.
So true.
And with the book, because I wrote the book and I got all the pain. It took me actually 1 week to finally sit down. 1 week of not sleeping, not eating, just writing. one
Wow.
week to write the draft. And then I sent it off, because I couldn't, when I was done with it, it was almost like giving birth. It's like, okay, I can't do anymore right now. I'm going to send
I
it.
need a
So
break.
exactly. So I just sent it to be edited and proofread and all that stuff. I already chose the cover, because this, I probably told you before, the cover of the book is actually me. Um, I'm gonna show the cover. Those of you, I don't like this image of how it does that, but this dark person, right here, is actually me. My husband and I was 3 months pregnant. We were vacationing in Montreal, and we went into some cathedral, and it said no flash photography. So I was in front of some candles, just meditating and lighting, and you could light a candle. So there were no more candles to light because all the other people lit them. So I just stood there and sort of meditated. And I had no idea my husband had broke the law and took a picture. I didn't know it until we got back from Canada. But I liked the picture so much. It just said so many things to me that I
Mhm.
just kept it. I said, I'm going to save this picture for something.
Yeah.
And when I was thinking of a cover for this book, I didn't hesitate. I said, that picture, I'm putting that picture on there.
Yeah. It's fitting, very fitting. And good for your husband for breaking the law. Wearing
I,
heels, breaking the law. You got a rock star, man.
he
Um,
is.
I'm curious though, when I went through your book,
Yes.
the biggest questions that were running through my head as I was walking through your journey, because I've had struggles in this area, was when you came into trusting your life and committing and saying vows and getting married and now trusting somebody into your world after all that you've endured with domestic violence and incest and
Mhm.
just complete neglect and racial stuff, even growing up as a child. It's just been a long journey for you. How was it coming into a marriage and then now walking through your healing in that marriage? Because I know in my journey, there is, like, my intimate life has had struggles,
Mhm.
where there's certain times where we're having an intimate moment and there's triggers, and then I'll
Yes.
just burst into tears.
Yeah.
And my husband's like, what did I do? And I'm like, it's
Yeah.
not you. Like, and trying to walk through that and try to
Yes.
articulate it with the one
Yes.
that you love and you're sharing your
Yeah.
life with
Yeah.
was so challenging.
Oh, yes.
Um, so how was that for you? How did you explore that
Well,
area?
first when my husband had after he had proposed to me, I had a poetry book that had some autobiographical information in it that I wrote. And I gave it to him. I said, I want you to read this and then see if you still want to marry me. And he did. He read it. And he was silent for about a day. I didn't hear from him. And I was like, well, I guess I got my answer.
I scared
But
that one off.
yeah, I was like, the answer's there. But no, then he had called, and actually he had come over and he said, it wasn't your fault. What
Mm,
happened? It's not
not
your
one
fault.
bit.
What happened? And um he's been good. Like, um he's actually like tried to do research and study, so so he knows, and so he's aware of how survivors be, the typical survivor reaction and things like that. But I'm telling you, the first year was very difficult because there were so many triggers. There were so many intimate things that I was not keen on because of what happened to me.
Mm.
So, I told, and I would feel bad. I would say, I know you probably wish you had someone who's better intimately. He's like, no, no, that's not. I was young. I had all of that already. I don't need that, you know, and I don't, but it was, and I would feel embarrassed explaining to him why something d- triggered me,
Right.
because you don't even you don't know what's going to trigger you. It
No.
just happens.
Yeah,
It
and one
happens.
time it does and one time it doesn't. So there's no
Exactly.
rule
It's
book.
never the same.
Mhm.
Exactly. And that's what I experienced. And so it's like taking baby steps with it. And now we know, uh we know to progress, to go slowly, and not to go all wild and everything, because it could be a trigger. So, I felt bad, but when I first laid eyes upon him, I was told, a voice had told me that he'll be a great father. And I'm like, what? I'm not even dating him. I don't know him, but he has been wonderful, more than I could have asked for.
Yeah.
And I was, when I was younger, I'd said, I'm never getting married. I'm never going to trust anyone with my children. I was afraid that it'll end up like my father, someone hurting them.
Mhm.
And I still have that tendency to be the panther protecting their cubs, but at least I trust him with their children, and they adore him.
Yeah.
And
I so I had my daughter, I was 7 months pregnant when my mom took her life. And so when I had my daughter, she was like my saving grace. Like she was my everything. I wanted to protect her, guard her, and make sure that she never had experienced or, I helicopter mothered her. Like, and she'll tell you that to this day that I was a helicopter mom. But I was so engrossed in wanting to keep her safe from
right.
anything that I've experienced or anything that my mother had experienced as she was growing up. And when I got married, there was like sometimes I would wake up in the middle of the night and I would be like, because my husband's a night owl, and I'm like, is he visiting my daughter? Like,
Yeah.
I'd have those questions running through my head because I don't know my real dad. The stepdad that I had was the one that would visit me in the middle of the night. And I always had that, oh, she's not his, so is he going to do that too? And so that fear would rise up in me, and it would steal so many nights of sleep because I
Yes.
was constantly always like listening to every single sound, or
Mhm.
going and putting paper in my daughter's door to make sure that like I could check to see if somebody entered her room, or just crazy things.
Oh,
And
I know.
yeah, and just the fear of the rejection and the abandonment issues that I had endured as a child, and then losing my mom, and then my stepdad, and everybody I knew to be my family were like, "Oh, you're not blood related. We don't want nothing to do with you." And I was pregnant, so I'm like, I just lost everything that I knew to be my family since I was 6, and this like, so she was my everything. And I get that panther cub mama, lioness within, just like do anything,
Oh,
will
yeah.
bite anyone's head off just to guard and protect, right?
Yeah. Yep. I'm sorry. My kids were screaming outside. I was just looking.
Yeah, no worries. You got to keep your eyes on them. They're still in their prime time, so
Right.
um,
It's, and I write in throughout my book, I talk a lot about my mother. I've so wanted, I so, I so wanted a relationship with her. And you'll see that I tried many times and it would hurt. Oh, and I, even after you know, when I graduated high school, it was horrible. I did so well, but no one clapped for me except one student. One student, like when, and I'm still friends with him, but um, my father had just come out of the hospital, and I had said, I wish he had died in there. So I was so angry,
mm,
and he did not want me to say goodbye to any of my friends, nothing. He was just horrible, horrible. And my mother, there was no way she was coming to my graduation, and I had to lie and say, oh, the teachers are having a dinner afterwards with their students. It was my friend's restaurant, my friend's family's restaurant, and they just were having a goodbye dinner, and I wanted to go. I never got to go to anything. And so all the way there, my father cussed me out and called me all kind of names. He was just angry and yelling at me for no apparent reason. And he did that a lot. He just yelled at me, say I was fast and I was fresh. Don't think because you're 18 I can't kick your A, blah blah blah, all the time. And I would just be quiet. And then when I got dropped off there, he went around the block, or went around a couple of blocks. I ordered I ordered the food because the food was was being prepared, and there he was, right at the window of the restaurant with the headlights on.
oh, creepy.
And I had to go. I hadn't even been there an hour, and I had to go. And I said, guys, I gotta go. Got in the car and got cussed out again all the way home.
And your dad was an alcoholic, you said, right?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yep, he was. And even after it affected his health so that he had to stop, he still behaved like one.
Yeah.
And he still behaved like one. And my mother knew how he was with little girls, because he had a
Really?
reputation
And
of
she
picking up.
she knew, and she still left you there?
Yes, she didn't want me. She didn't want any
She didn't
reminder
want to
of.
protect you.
No, I was not. She didn't want me. She didn't want me because what she cheated on her husband to be with my father, and I was the result. And then she went back to her first husband, who really loved her, and had another child, but it was her son, her only son. And he knew that he was that man's son, but she sent him to live with my father and me.
So your
I don't
brother
know
came
why.
to live with you?
Yeah, I don't know why. Oh, well, also that the husband was so mad at her. I mean, they had divorced, and he was already remarried and had loads of children with his new wife, and there was no way he was going to. She broke his heart
Mm.
basically, and he was not taking the kid back. That kid,
Your
my
brother,
half brother.
right. And do you still have a relationship with him? Because I am, no, because in part of your story, there was like a bit of a
Yeah,
journey where you were trying to communicate the
yeah.
decisions that you were making. And
No, he I don't have a relationship with any of them. My mother has a skill of turning people against me. Um, and he was so resentful, just resentful for no reason whatsoever. Just resented me and told me I was going to hell, and that I practicing yoga was going to send me to the devil, and all of this stuff that she told him about me, and saying that I need to ask for forgiveness because I was a bad seed. That's what she told everyone, that I was the bad child. I was the bad seed.
mm,
And everyone believed it because they were stuck in her wallet. She bought them houses and fancy cars because she had a business, this successful business with her new husband who had loads of money, and paid for them to go to school when I had to struggle to go to college and pay my own way. And none of them showed up at my graduation. I didn't ask them to come. I had no one out there. So
yeah,
that was that. And I begrudgingly invited her to my wedding, thinking that maybe she'd change. I tried many, many times, and it blew up in my face every single time.
yeah,
When I became a teacher, when I graduated from college and I became a teacher, and I showed up at her business one day, and I brought her a bouquet of roses and said, look, everything is the past. I need you to be my mother now. Be my friend. She
yeah.
couldn't do it. She
Oh,
cried. She couldn't do it. Her husband said, you always been bad. And I said, I don't even know you. How do you know that I've always been bad?
right. Like you asked for any of this,
Yeah.
right?
And yeah, I wasn't bad. I just trying to survive. And there was no one there to help me. How could I have been bad?
That's right.
And
Yeah.
I didn't do anything. My oldest sister has said, and I said it in the book, when I had run away from home so I could go to college, she said, why are you running away? You're just going to become a prostitute to take care of yourself. Why would I go there? I worked 2 jobs, one on
Yeah.
campus and one off campus. Went to school full time and year round to and I studied hard. And I mean, it was not easy. But that
No.
was why would I end up going down that street? But that's what I don't know. That's the story that my mother had concocted and spread. And a lot of people believed it. And I just had to keep going, knowing that I can't change what she said and what people are going to think about me. It hurt. It
Yeah.
made me very alone. Holidays, there was me alone.
Yeah.
And when I became a professional and I can afford, and when I became a teacher and I could afford to go away for holidays, I did by myself because I didn't want. I just I don't know. I didn't have any reason to
Bless
be.
yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
You deserve to be blessed and to do something that brought joy to your heart. So good for you for making that choice. That's awesome. I know what it's like when people speak negative things about you. My whole childhood was like you're a nobody, you're nothing, you're never
Yeah.
going to amount to anything, don't ever try. And I remember telling my mom one time, so because somebody had said, oh, Stacy, you got nice long legs and beautiful blonde hair, you should be a model. And I was like, oh, somebody thought I was pretty. And so I went home and I shared that with my mom, and she's like, don't even think about it. And I
Uh-huh.
guarantee, like, her heart, like, as I've processed my own healing journey, her heart was like, because I'm a product of prostitution. And in her mind, that area of her past and modeling lived
Mhm.
on the very same street. And
Mhm.
so she didn't want me to walk that life. And so she just tried to shut me down as quickly as possible, not realizing the damage that it did within. So just her response is like, oh, well, I guess I am the ugly duckling in my family. And I honestly, I looked completely different than everyone in my family. They're all like dark hair and short, and well, not super short, but like shorter than me. And um uh darker skin, they can tan nicely, their skin just absorbs the sun, and I'm like white or red, like there's no in between for me unless I'm peeling. So I always felt like I was a misfit growing up, so I know that being displaced. And I remember walking through my own healing journey, and I was like, God, like, why did you put me through that,
Mhm.
to that family? Why did you give me to that family? If you
Mhm.
love me so much
Mhm.
and you know the beginning and the middle and the end of my life, like, why did you choose this for me? And he's like, who else? Somebody needed to stand in the gap, to be there, to be a light, to stand
Exactly.
strong, to show your
Right.
strength and the strength within, that you can endure all of that and still be positive and still look at life optimistically. Because I always have always been a kind of a dreamer, and always believed that this is not the way my life is supposed to be.
Mm.
And I always looked at whatever situation I was facing growing up. I was like, no, this is not everybody's life. And I know that there's got to be a way I can live a different life. And I just got to find that path. And so that tenacity of just like grinding it out and going through all the pain and all, just totally exposing yourself is one of the hardest things to do, which you've done in your book and speaking on stages. That it takes immense courage. As afraid as you were as stepping up on stage, that takes immense courage to be able to expose yourself in that way, especially knowing that there's people in the audience that knew you in those days of
Mhm.
your deepest trials. I love the name of your book, by the way, After the
Thank you.
Darkness. It just
Thank you.
triggers my heart.
Yeah.
um, but after all of what you've endured, and you found some levels of success of getting married and starting your beautiful family, and then just living life, you've recently this year have been facing another trauma that has been paralyzing you, and really challenging your family dynamic and what you're able and not able to do, and just the fears that are rising up within you and your family. And could you just share a little bit about what you're currently going through? Because I think that the world truly needs to know, like, hey, there's this beautiful Candace. She's endured so much trauma. She's turning it into a testimony of faith and strength, and encouraging other women to step into their superpower of being a survivor, and sharing their stories. So you're doing all this great work, and now you're like, bam, like, what's
Yeah.
going on now?
I think this is, this is another, um,
Sequel to your
another,
book.
yes, yes. But my husband says that too, and I said, well, I can't write it now because I'm so close to it, and I'm just,
Still in it.
not ready. But we've lived next door to this person for 9 years, and we've never had, we knew their beliefs and things like that. We just never knew it would be visited upon us. So since January of this year, we've been enduring the harassment, the racial tension, because I am a person of color and they don't like that. Um, being called scumbags and all sorts of words over the fence. And I mean, the first thing that started it all was a hate-filled letter that we received in January on the day of the inauguration. My family and I were watching Biden's inauguration, and we're eating popcorn and just having a good time watching all the things. The mail arrived. I went to get the mail, and I saw this letter addressed from Boston. Opened it, and my kids, if someone comes to the door or mail comes to the door, it's like everyone goes to the door. So they're reading over my shoulder, and it's horrible, telling me that I need to take down my Black Lives Matter signs, that they are offensive. And I don't even have the real logo stuff. It's just a tiny garden flag that has 3 words, Black Lives Matter, in like rainbow colors. That's it. It's not even official gear. So
Right.
so and then that we should get on our knees and beg for forgiveness, that we're communist. Antifa stormed the Capitol, and they have proof. Said it was a brain dead idiot. A lot of insult after insult after insult. And then they included a page of Photoshop images of President Biden with women in inappropriate positions. And what was I to do? I was shocked. If you're already a person who's been traumatized, and you're a person of color living in a really, really white suburb, of course you're going to feel threatened. So I called the police. Police took a report, and they found out who it was. And they actually went up to her and questioned her, and she admitted it. But then later on, she said that, publicly in social media and stuff, that I lied. And I said, what did I lie about? It's all in the letter. I didn't lie about anything. But through, I'd go out in my garden, and she put signs in her window that's over my garden, calling me a liar. Nice big letters. Candace lied. You lied. Hashtag Candace lied. And then she'd write on social media that, like on Nextdoor, I lied. And her friends, who were just as racist as she, would all chime in, ask what color I was, and called me the African, not even the African American, the African, which I find so degrading. I have a name. My name's Candace.
That's right.
And then I find, then the news comes, and I speak out about it, and then I name her because the police named her. It's in their report, so I named her. Why should I protect her? And that's when she went crazy and started harassing us even further, putting boat trailers on our beautiful lawn when they usually put their boat trailer in their yard. Driving by, and if we're outside our front yard, giving the middle finger, calling us crazy bee, and her playing music with it, bragging on social media that they have a 200 something watt Bluetooth speaker that they're going to harass us with.
Right.
So I happen to be outside planting. She sets it right on the other side of the fence and turns it up so loud that they could hear it 3 streets over. And there's kids in 3 streets over and all those houses, and they're hearing all the vulgar words. Our kids are in the house because they were at this point, they were too afraid to come outside and enjoy their beautiful backwooded yard because of this woman and her craziness. And so my husband called the police, and the police could hear it before they got here. And she yelling at the police, saying that, the phrase Karen, well, she turned into a Karen right there. You guys should you're not protecting me. You're not doing anything to protect me. They are the aggressors. You should be protecting me.
Oh, right.
That's what she said. She was yelling at the police, and the police said, "Turn it down." You know, um, I mean, again, we have the police, you know, those old phone books. Our file is thicker than that on all the police reports and narrative incidents that we had to get. We have to file against them. It was so tedious. It was like every week we're at the police station.
And this has just started in January of this year, so not
January.
even a full year of
No,
burn.
and it's been a nightmare. You know, but the town has been beautiful. We've gotten tons of supportive cards from people we don't even know in the town.
And little
And
fairies.
yeah, you know, they and flowers and gift baskets with support,
Oh,
because
encouragement.
you know, and get surprise gifts like surveillance cameras
Oh,
and um big gigantic Bluetooth earphones, so I can go out my garden and actually not hear her. And
right.
that really made her mad. um and letters of support when we put up our lattice, because you know, she got really mad when she could not see me in my garden, and she was yelling at my husband and the handyman when they were putting it up. She was screaming out the window at them, "This is
Wow.
Barrington, you're gonna have to take it down." And she called the zoning guy, who was, you know, this fragile weak dude, and just kept message after message after message yelling at him to yell at me, which he did. He called me and he yelled at me. So I told our lawyer about it, and I said, "He's calling me, yelling at me." And so, when at first he said in an email before she even yelled, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't get involved in the situation. This is not my area." After she got to him, yelled at him, he called and yelled at me, and he was very awful and nasty and rude to me on the phone.
Mhm.
And when after our lawyer got to him, he called me and
Oh,
said, "Did you call me? I just wanted to make sure if you called me." I said,
but
"No, I did not call you. There's no reason for me to call you."
that's
And
right.
then I called our lawyer back, and he says, "Yeah, I called him. I talked to him. If he calls you again, you tell me." And I said, "Thanks." You know,
Yeah, to
because
change his tune.
yeah, I changed his tune. So because we not only have a lawyer, we have the best one in town. So
You.
um who's really good. And it's just, but it's just awful. And it's just awful. And the 4th of July, I mean, the marshal put out a letter that no residential people are supposed to have any pop up fireworks. You can do only sparklers and those little snake things on the ground. Did they care? It was like I was in a third world country in a war. Everyone was crying in the house. The cats were scared. It was scary. The things that were popping out, and then she was screaming on purpose. And went after 10 o'clock, they were still doing it.
Wow.
And it was like a war. And I sent that because I have a meeting with some people um, who have been discussing what they called my outrageous neighbor.
Yeah.
And because people should be able to go in their own backyard and not be harassed. I
Yes,
mean,
they should.
this woman called me to another person because when she has her friends over, she thinks that all of them are her friends. A watermelon eaten N. That's what I was called. A watermelon eaten
You
N.
know, I when this stuff goes on, I was telling my husband the other night, I'm like, there's so much division happening in our world.
Mm-hmm.
Division of race, division of culture, division of religion. There's
Mm-hmm.
so much division. And why? Because we're pointing incidences that happened decades ago to
Mm-hmm.
the people that are here today that had nothing to do with it. So deal with it, that situation with the individuals that caused the harm or the offense back then, and don't carry it forward. Like I'm not, I might be a product of prostitution, but you can't blame my mom's choices on me. I had nothing to do with it. It's
Right.
the same with you. Like for her to say like you need to get on your knees and ask for forgiveness. What for? Like
Right.
what the heck did you do?
What did I do?
Nothing.
I'm living my life here.
You're
I'm not
breathing air?
bothering.
Like that's crazy.
It's absolutely, and I really think though that she has an issue, like she has a mental,
Obviously,
because
mental
she
issue.
does she does this extreme, and I think it might be bipolar because she goes extreme and then draws back quickly. I mean, she's done some really, really extreme things, and then she'll be quiet, like, oh my goodness, that was bad. But
Mm.
wait a few days and it happens again.
And is she married or does she live by herself?
Well, she filed for divorce in 2019, but they couldn't afford it. So he lives in the basement and of
And
the house.
what is he like? Have you had any interactions with
He
him? Like,
never talked to me since the day I moved here. He talked to my husband, but he's not right either.
oh,
He just wants to go on his boat and live and that's it. It's not good over there. It's not good. It's not good over there. And they have a 16-year-old daughter. It's
oh,
not, she's been radicalized, so it's over. She's been radicalized, and they fly their pine tree flag up there, which she's very much a part of this movement of depopulation of the earth, for people, get rid of people who look like me, and stockpiling guns. That's what they do. That's their thing. And they for whatever revolution is going to happen. But that's
because I don't watch the news, Candace, because I think it's just toxic. So
no, I
you're
did my
telling me
research.
that there's like a movement where people are wanting to depopulate people that aren't like them.
It's called it's white purity. It's the Pine Tree Party. And
Oh,
I didn't know until I saw the flag, and then I looked it up. I did some research.
oh my gosh, us white people, we're horrible. Like if I was to claim, like if we were to say like, oh, we're all in the same boat, like I can't get over what some of us people do. Like, um, I can't fathom it. Like, why do people think this way? Why do they do these things? Why do they say these things? How is this affecting your 10 and 13-year-old? Like, you have young children.
I do. It's been hard for them. There have been times where I just held them and we cried. It's hard for me a lot. They've taught, because I have PTSD and stuff, and I've ended up in the hospital a few times because of this.
Right?
Um,
Rightfully, I can see how. Yeah, absolutely.
yes. And just kids are resilient, but also they talk about it a lot with me. And when they see me going through it, it affects them.
Yeah. They don't want to see
And
their mama hurt.
that's why I try not to. And during the school year when we had to do distance learning because of COVID, a lot of the things happened while they were in school. The police would be outside and they'd have no clue that it was there because they had their headphones on and they were in the Zoom. So those things they avoided, like when she was screaming on the lawn at my husband for talking to a neighbor, saying that this is happening because your wife's an effing liar, and then to an 86-year-old lady
Come on.
yelling.
Come
And
on.
then she did, but that lady's she's a hot ticket. She yelled right back at her. She said, "You're the one who's a liar. Go back in your house and shut your window."
I love elders. They are so like, I
I
ain't got
know.
nothing to lose. I'll just tell you straight, girl.
That's
Like,
where
I
I want
love,
to be when I become an elder. That's it.
yeah. Just Unfiltered.
Exactly.
I love it.
But it's been hard, and so I would have to explain to their teachers, why certain days were on up and down and everything, and I helped them really as much, I helped them, and they did well this year. But I wanted to their teachers, because their teachers saw it all in the news
Yeah.
and in the papers and on TV. So it's nothing different. Everyone knew. We go into CVS, and the lady at the counter says, "I'm so sorry what your family's going through, blah blah blah." But we've had support, and that was encouraging, because being in a predominantly white neighborhood, and being the Black person, to say, I'm not going to just sit here and not say anything. What kind of example am I setting for my children?
That's right.
We tell our children to stand up to bullies. So this is a bully. I have to stand up.
Yeah.
And it's a racist bully. So I have to stand up.
And it's hard because, like you said, like you're an empath and you've already
Yes.
experienced so much.
Yeah.
And now you're facing this. It's just like it feels like, well, I don't know what it would feel like. I can't even relate to the trauma that you're facing today. I can't even fathom the toxicity that's happening in your home, around your home, because you're
Yeah.
obviously inside your four walls is like
Yeah.
lots of love, because your kids are obviously communicating well with you, which is
Yeah.
which is a
We
lot
talk.
of credit.
We're very open and talk, and we do at nighttime, we do shares, we share out, and we have that time to discuss. But we try to always talk about our kids about what's going on, not to hide it from them. And they see the flags,
Yeah.
they see the signs in the window.
And is there a lot of that in your community, those stupid flags, like where people are promoting this new
No,
crazy
I've seen
movement?
probably like 3 in the entire town.
Okay.
But I've seen more of, like, this wonderful woman made a campaign that says, I stand with Candace, and she started making these signs that they
Aw.
put in their windows. So it makes us feel comfortable when we're driving through town and we see I stand with Candace, or Black Lives Matter, or a new thing for our town is hate has no home here.
Oh,
And
I love
the
that.
hearts, yep, the hearts, and you see them on people's lawns, and it just makes you feel, it makes us feel good,
Yeah.
because I was hiding when this all started, because I was scared. I'd go for a walk and I
You
was
think,
afraid.
yeah, you think if it's that neighbor, then it's all the white neighbors, right?
Exactly, exactly.
It's
And
so
I've been here a
infuriating.
while. And my husband and I, last week, I think we're like, okay, let's go back out and do walks. Let's go back out for walks. Cause I enjoyed my walk. I would go through the nature trail at the park. I'd walk up and go around, go through the woods, cause that was my favorite part. And then come out back to our house.
Yeah.
And it was 20 minutes flat, and it was a good exercise. So my husband and I'm like, let's do it. I'm going to be brave. Let's do it. We didn't work.
No?
We got to our street, and this guy pulled up in a truck, was angry. He looked at me like I was poop, and he slowed down right next to us, and just looked like I was nothing, like I was poop. And then he made a grimace on his face, like, ew, and it hurt. It hurts, because I don't think why am I ugly
They
because
don't
I'm
know you.
brown?
They don't even know you. And what's that good old saying? Don't judge a book until you read it. Like, don't judge a book by its cover, right? Like, we're not supposed
Well,
to judge anybody. Like, that's not our job.
my color and being outside infuriates this neighbor and makes them do crazy and say crazy and awful things. And I just sometimes ask, when is this going to be over? When is this
Right.
going to be over? And why?
Lord, give
And
her a new neighbor.
and so when there have been vigils in support of us. the town has done. The Black Lives Matter people came to town and had a peace rally where I shared my story, and again, without even mentioning her name. I didn't mention her name. She didn't need to come out of my mouth. But I had said, you know, what am I to do? Move? Where am I going to move to? It's not going to change my skin color.
No, that's
I
right.
might get an even worse neighbor.
Well, we're just going to pray for a better neighbor for you.
Yeah, it just has to. I mean, she's been saying that she's moving for years, and they haven't moved.
Good. Do you want me to help you pack your bags?
Yeah, you know, exactly. Many people have offered. Offered her, not taking it. But I just, we should be able to go in our own fenced in private backyard and have quiet enjoyment. That's what it says in the real estate contract, quiet enjoyment. And when someone infringes upon your quiet enjoyment, it is no longer freedom of speech. It's not freedom of speech to call someone a scumbag and yell at them just because they went outside and you don't like them.
No, that's not freedom of speech. That freedom of speech is sharing your opinion, but not judging other people because of their appearance. Like, well, that's just retarded.
Well, that's the excuse that some of these law people are saying she has freedom of speech. It's not freedom of speech.
No.
When you have to live, when you're put, it's not freedom of speech to put something on someone else's property. No. You know, they nailed a 12-foot plywood concoction to our fence, 12 foot tall, to our fence, because we put up the lattice.
And why did they? Yeah. So what does that do for them?
Because they said that, and it looked horrible and they put a ladder against it, and then they put a ladder against our lattice to try to break it, and then they put a pool noodle on top of their 12-foot thing. I don't know what the pool noodle was for, but it was dumb. And they thought they were going to get a lot of laughs from their friends in the community, but a lot of the people were saying, what's the ladder for? Why do you have a 12-foot plywood, a bunch of plywood nailed together on their fence? And so they took it down. But they were going to be asked to take it down anyway by the time a lawyer had said, because they nailed it to our fence.
I am so sorry that you're going through all of this. It breaks my heart. Like, we've had a couple of conversations just trying to book this call, and every single time, like, you would share kind of the struggle that you're going through, and often even in between, you would come to my heart, and I'm like, oh Lord, just protect her, guide her, and give her wisdom to deal with all the things that she's having to face right now. I can't even imagine. But come on, people, we are there's more power in unity. Like, stop the division, stop separating humankind so that we can have our own agenda or whatever. There's some more power when we can come together and just in love and encouragement and support one another. Like, we all have stuff. Like, doesn't matter the color of our skin.
Right. And one thing that this incident has done was bring a lot of people together in this community. People who were conservative, but are not crazy, like that, you know. They have come together. Lots of people have come together to say that this is not right. A woman visited me with her 3-4 children and said, thank you for speaking up, because you're making a better way for my children in this town by speaking up and making it known that this is not right. That means you love my children too. And that, you know, and as I said, I know that there are consequences for me speaking out that something is not right, but I'll take those consequences if they make a better way for my children and the others in town who are coming up behind us.
That's right.
Um, I guess that's why I'm going through it, because I can take it, I suppose.
Well,
Although
you've
sometimes
endured
I don't
so
feel I
much.
can take it.
I know, I know. It's like, oh Lord, I've already been through enough. Like, stop.
Yeah, please.
Um, but obviously he trusts you enough and he knows that you're strong enough to bring this message to the world and to stand up for what you believe in and to make a better future, a legacy for your kids, to show that empowerment. You're really a great example for your kids of just showing them that you can be beaten down, but you will not be kept down. You will rise up no matter what adversity faces you and your family. And I'm so overwhelmed and full of joy at the fact that you have created this safe environment for you and your kids. I know outside your home it's kind of chaotic at the moment, but that too will pass. I do believe that either that neighbor will be replaced or she will have some kind of a
Oh, I believe that too.
moment,
I,
right?
I
um
believe it's not long.
yeah, that's, well, it's been long enough, like.
Exactly.
All right. Tick tock, tick tock, Lord. Our order is in. You need to
Yeah.
deliver. Because you don't need to go through this forever, right? Like,
Right.
and you shouldn't have to uproot your family from this home that sounds
No,
amazing, like a wood
thank you.
walking path behind you, the forest, like it sounds amazing, where you've been able to locate yourself. So
Yeah, you're welcome.
um, I just want to thank you, Candace, for just sharing your book and your journey and how you've been able to overcome some of this and some of your current day trials and tribulations and traumas that are happening right now. We need to bring that awareness piece to the world. And I really hope that this conversation today is going to inspire others to look inwards, to bring unity and to unify human nature, to make a bigger impact for loving one another. Like
Yes.
that's our commission, is just to love. We're not the judge. Like, and when people can look at somebody that's broken and see that their actions are like an addict, sometimes an addict will fall into that pit because of some really crazy trauma, and people will just judge the addict and the choices that that addict's making to numb their pain, but they're not looking at what is causing that pain, what is causing them to make those decisions. And so I want to challenge people today is just to not look at the current circumstance, but to actually dig in a little deeper and to see why we do what we do. I know I've had my fair share of ugly. Like, I've hit some pretty high levels of crazy in my journey. And when I look back into some of those people that if I was to interact with some of the, actually, I've ran into a couple of them. It's funny how God does that. You put them in your audience when you're sharing your story, or I run into them into the grocery store, and I instantly, like, it's like I instantly feel shallow and like I want to be invisible, like I was as a kid. And like, you can't see me, like, but then I'm like, why? Because I am not the same person.
That's
And we all have this journey where I have this phrase that I say. I'm like, oh God, I know I'm not where I want to be, but I'm most certainly not where I used to be. And I'm thankful for that. And so each day is a new day to make better choices and to continue to walk through whatever life throws at us, because life is a journey and it's full of all kinds of bumps and bruises,
yeah.
right?
Right.
Um,
Right.
Thank you, Candace. What are you, if somebody wanted to get in contact with you, I know that you can get Candace's book on Audible and Amazon, called After the Darkness by Candace Nadine Breen. I definitely recommend you grabbing it. It is a really great read. I listened to it, but I gobbled it up so quickly. And she did a really great job expressing and sharing her story in great detail. So if that's not something that you're into, I do want to highlight the fact that she does go into great detail in her experience, and it'll give you a whole new insight to survivals, so
Yeah.
survivors.
Yeah.
um, And so if somebody wanted to reach out to you, Candace, and to touch base and to connect
Yeah.
with you or support you in some way, how can they do that?
Well, they can visit my website at www.candacenadinebreen.com, and I'll spell it out. CandaceNadineBreen.com, all one word. And that has contact, it has my books, different, it has a little bit about me, um, links to different things. So check it out.
And do you happen to have any kind of like a GoFundMe type of account where people can donate towards, what this battle that you're facing right now with
Hmm.
law fees and any of that kind of stuff, that if anybody wanted to support you globally, could they do that to support your efforts of making a change in this racial nonsense that you're facing?
Well, that's so wonderful. I haven't put a GoFundMe on there, but if they uh, just fill out a contact form on where it says contact me, say I want to send you blah blah blah, I'll send them the link to my PayPal where they can just put it in there, because that's all I have right now. I have a donation PayPal donate, but I haven't put a donate button on there. Maybe I
Yeah,
should.
so I don't know where that came from, but I believe that that's the Lord saying, like, maybe there's somebody hearing this message today that really wants to help support you with all, because having to deal with all this legal stuff, it gets costly.
It
And
sure does.
and I'm sure it's not in your budget. When you planned your budget for
No,
2021, it was not in your
no,
budget.
it was not.
So
We've
so if
taken a hit.
anyone's hearing this message and you feel a prompting in your heart to want to support Candace and
Right.
her family of walking this adversity out, then definitely reach out to her on her website and
Yeah,
click
I'll put a donate button up there very shortly.
that sounds great, Candace. Thank you so much for sharing your story with me today. I am so honored that you took this time.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Well, you have an amazing day, my friend. Thank you once again. And I do look forward to staying connected with you and seeing how
Yes.
this all unfolds. I have that curiosity kills the cat kind of thing going on in me. So I'll be reaching out and see how the journey is going for you.
Okay.
And I'll continue to keep you in my heart and prayers for sure.
Thank
Your
you so
family.
much. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Bless you, darling.